Hey, what's up guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review for the LG 34UC79G. That is a 34-inch curved ultra-wide 144Hz monitor. Now before we get into the specs, I want to quickly talk about the price. It can be found for £480 on Amazon.co.uk and $630 on Amazon USA. Links will be down in the description below. Despite its relatively high price tag in comparison to an AOC 200Hz curved 1080p gaming monitor, it's much cheaper than a £600 price tag you'd have to pay for that monitor. So given at £480, I think it's a very affordable gaming monitor. Now in terms of specs, it's a 34-inch curved 144Hz monitor that runs at 2560 x 1080, so it's a 1080p monitor. It has an aspect ratio of 21:9, has an IPS panel, it has a quoted response time of 14 milliseconds with a 5 milliseconds G to G, so it can be boosted down. I'll get into that in just a bit. In terms of inputs, it has two HDMI 2.0 inputs, one DisplayPort 1.2 input, and it's got a 2-port USB 3.0 hub found at the back, one of which has quick charge enabled. Other than that, it has a VESA 100x100 and it has AMD FreeSync built in. Its AMD FreeSync range over DisplayPort is 50Hz to 144Hz, which is a fantastic range for FreeSync gamers out there. Unfortunately, I cannot test its FreeSync capabilities because I don't have an AMD GPU in order to test that. Now in terms of the actual build quality of the monitor, first of all, that's the first thing I want to talk about of this monitor. Now the monitor is relatively well built. When I say relatively well built, I feel that its stand could have been a little bit more premium, mainly due to the looks. Because in terms of functionalities, it does what it says on the tin. It holds down the monitor sturdy. And in terms of the adjustment, you can height adjust the monitor and you can tilt the monitor, which is exactly what you'd expect for a 34-inch monitor or a stand that's holding up a 34-inch monitor. However, the stand isn't too premium looking, it looks relatively cheap, and with its plastic look, I feel that it could have just been a little bit better, or LG could have paid a little bit more attention to it. In terms of bezels, it's got practically no bezels on the sides of the monitor. However, due to the way the display is made, you do have a black border. Now the black border isn't too distracting and isn't something I would be too worried about, because it adds almost to it adds the extra bulk to the bezels. However, it's not super noticeable and it's not something that I would really be too worried about. So overall, in terms of build quality here, LG have done a fantastic job. On a little side note, I should mention that the bottom of the monitor gets quite hot, and by that I mean the metal strip which is found at the top. Especially where the LG logo is over here, it's very, very hot, and it's something that I just should mention just because it's something that I observed. Now in terms of accessing the OSD, LG have incorporated a single joystick button found in the middle of the monitor, and I absolutely love it. The OSD is very accessible and it's very easy to use, especially through that joystick button. Now going through the OSD options, I had no sort of problems in terms of the things that they are to offer. If you go through it, you'll be able to see the inputs that you can choose from. In terms of picture mode, I'll just go through the things I set. So on picture mode, I've gone on custom. There's no sRGB mode or Adobe RGB mode that you can choose from. Picture adjust, I've got it on brightness 100, contrast 75, whereas the default is 70, and the rest of it I've left them on default. On game adjust, I've got response time on fast, FreeSync off as I previously mentioned, 1 millisecond motion blur off as well, but you can set that on as well. It basically acts like ULMB. And I'll get into these in just a bit in terms of gaming. In terms of color adjust, I've got gamma as 1, where you can select between 0 and 2 as well. In color temperature, I've got it on custom. Again, there's no sort of color kelvins that you can choose from, which is slightly a shame. But in terms of red, I've got 50, green 50, and blue 48. Now the reason I chose blue as 48 is simply because I felt that the monitor had a sort of blue tinge to it. The monitor does have a sort of blue hue, which was slightly odd to me because normally I wouldn't notice this from a monitor. Whereas if you gave me a smartphone, I would probably notice it and tell you, yes, it's got a sort of blue tinge to it. So yes, this LG isn't the most color accurate monitor you can expect out there, so you will need to set it up yourself. It's as simple as reducing the blues by two by 2 dots. However, even with that said, I still wouldn't use this monitor for color accurate image editing or video editing. It just isn't there for it. With that said, the monitor looks fantastic. If you're going to be looking at it in terms of like a photo video editing perspective, then no, it's probably not the right monitor for you. It doesn't even have sRGB mode or Adobe RGB mode for you. However, looking in terms of like a gaming perspective and in terms of what this monitor is made for gamers, then it's fantastic because the colors are vibrant. Say for example, in this image, you can see colors are really coming out. In this image, again, it's like really good colors coming out over here, and that is also due to the fact that I've set contrast at 75 versus 70. At 70, I felt the images were just a little bit too dull. It just felt lacking a little bit. But nevertheless, if you just customize it through the OSD as I showed you, then you'll get the best colors, that, at least in my opinion, the best colors that I could achieve from the monitor. So images do pop, colors are saturated but not overly saturated. Blacks come out fantastic in terms of the black level. Like for example, this image, there's a deep black color over here. It's not grayish, it's not overdone. And in terms of the white point, it is very accurate and it looks very nice as well. So again, no sort of problems. I should, however, mention a few things. First of all, backlight bleed. I didn't notice much backlight bleed, but given the size of the monitor, I do notice a slight backlight bleed coming from the top end of the monitor. Not so much at the bottom, but it's a slight backlight bleed at the top. In terms of the uniformity, from my own eyes, I didn't notice too much of a problem. In terms of viewing angles, again, no sort of problems, but if you want the most accurate colors, you should sit pretty centered to the screen. And the reason I say that is because when you start moving to the left and right, I feel that the colors, especially the white point, does kind of diminish. Now, in terms of looking at the side of the screen, I do notice that there is a slight clipping at the edge. It's very hard to show you on the camera, but all I can do is try and describe it. Essentially, you lose a bit of text, a little bit of image on this side of the screen. Now, a lot of, some other monitors I've reviewed in the past, looking at it from its center and looking to the sides, you'd notice this loss of screen. However, with this LG, you don't notice that unless you move to extreme angles. So if you're going to be looking at it to a certain degree, you're going to notice that loss of text and loss of image. So do bear that in mind if you're going to be getting the monitor. But overall, guys, colors were fantastic, and I'm very impressed with what LG have done over here. Definitely suggested in terms of viewing, say, games, for example, in a great resolution. Now, in terms of its gaming performance, now despite its quoted response time, as you saw, I put it on the fastest mode. Now, the reason I put it on the fastest mode in terms of game adjust is because on the fastest mode, I didn't notice any sort of problems. Most times you put it on fast and you'd notice a lot of inverse ghosting or overshoot in terms of the ghosting. So therefore you'd notice a lot of purple haze and like black sort of images moving behind each other. This is not the case with this monitor, and I must say I'm very impressed with that. So if you're going to be using this for gaming, first of all, put it to fast. But then, how does it work in terms of gaming? Now, in terms of gaming, I was very impressed. Its response time is very good on the fast response time setting, and to the point that I would actually use it for competitive gaming, such as like playing Counter-Strike. There's no sort of problem using the monitor, and more so its input lag feels relatively fast. In other words, it's a low input lag, and therefore it can be used for competitive gaming as well. Often you'll find that monitors that are big like this will not do well in terms of competitive gaming, but they will be fine for casual gaming. This is not the case with this LG. I feel that you could game competitive on it, and in terms of casual gaming, you won't have a problem. However, there's one thing that I should point out, and that is the brightness. I felt that the brightness could do a little bit higher. Now, it's not really to do with gaming, but I do notice it in certain games that the color just is missing a little bit. Not in terms of color, just its brightness is missing a bit, so in order to really make the game feel more alive. It feels a little bit subdued. Now, I don't know if LG have done this by purpose, but it's something I noticed both in terms of looking at pictures and even looking at a game. So it's just something that you should bear in mind, that it won't go as bright as some other monitors out there. But what do I think of the monitor given this sort of flaw or the other flaws that I mentioned? Well, for £480, I don't think you can come across a better curved 34-inch gaming monitor. Okay, it's only 1080p, but given the price, you should expect that, and given its performance, it's very impressive. So I would highly suggest it if you're looking for a 1080p curved gaming monitor. It's not perfect by any means, however, it's one of the best out there, and I would definitely suggest it. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and more than anything, favorite and share. Alright guys, Totally Dubbed out. Bye bye.